A drug-free lifter who has never trained before can expect to add somewhere in the range of 20 pounds of muscle over his first year of serious work. In the second year, that number roughly halves. By the fourth or fifth year, a genuinely good year might add 2 or 3 pounds to the frame. Those figures are the entire reason lean bulking exists as a strategy, and they're the first thing that separates natural training from most of what gets performed online. I want to begin there because almost every mistake in a natural bulk traces back to a single misunderstanding about rate. Muscle arrives on a schedule your biology sets, and that schedule is slow. You cannot pay to speed it up with extra food. Past a certain modest surplus, the additional calories have nowhere useful to go, so they go to fat. That's the whole premise behind learning how to lean bulk rather than just eating big. A lean bulk isn't a gentler version of a dirty bulk. It's an admission that muscle has a top speed, and that feeding past that speed only buys you a longer cut later. The enhanced physiques that quietly set everyone's expectations are operating under different rules, and it's worth being precise about how. Anabolics raise the ceiling on how much muscle the body will hold, improve how readily surplus calories get partitioned toward muscle instead of fat, and speed recovery enough that far more training can be absorbed. A lifter on gear can gain muscle and lose fat at the same time, at rates a natural lifter simply cannot reach. So when that lifter says he bulked on a large surplus and stayed lean, he isn't lying. He's describing a machine that runs on different fuel. Copy his surplus onto your body, and you get his calories without his partitioning. That single mismatch is behind most of the regret people feel 4 months into a bulk, staring at a waistline they didn't expect. That mismatch is exactly what my natural lean bulk program fixes: the surplus, the macros, and the progression already dialed in for a drug-free body. If you'd rather follow the system than build it yourself, the link's in the description. Once you accept the rate, the surplus sizes itself. Most naturals do well adding somewhere around 10% above maintenance, which, for a lot of people, lands between 200 and 300 calories a day. The target you're steering toward is a gain of roughly 1/4 to 1/2 pound per week. A true beginner can sometimes run the top of that range and still stay reasonably lean, because early training makes the body unusually willing to build. Everyone past that first stretch should sit at the low end. If the scale is climbing faster than about 1/2 pound a week over time, you're no longer bulking lean, you're just gaining weight and hoping some of it is muscle. To set the surplus, you first need maintenance, and this is where learning how to calculate your macros stops being abstract. Maintenance is the number of calories that holds your weight steady, and the honest way to find it is to eat at a consistent intake for 2 or 3 weeks and watch the trend on the scale, not to trust a formula. A calculator gives you a starting estimate. Your own body gives you the real figure. Once you have it, you add your small surplus, and then you divide those calories into the 3 things that matter. Protein comes first, and the amount that keeps coming up in the research is around 3/4 gram to 1 gram per pound of body weight. There's little reason to go higher, and going much lower leaves gains on the table. Fat comes next, because it's tied to hormone production and shouldn't be crushed too low. Somewhere around 1/4 to 1/2 gram per pound covers it for most people. Whatever calories remain after protein and fat are set become carbohydrates, and carbohydrates are what fuel hard training. That's the entire method for how to calculate your macros: maintenance plus a small surplus, protein anchored to body weight, fat kept high enough to be safe, carbs filling the rest. If you'd rather not run these numbers yourself every week, my program does the calculating and the adjusting for you automatically. You can grab it from the link below before we go on. There's a specific starting point that deserves its own attention, because a large share of the people asking about any of this are starting from it. The skinny fat lifter is someone who carries very little muscle and a soft layer of fat at the same time, often after years of being sedentary or after a diet that stripped weight without any training underneath it. The question that stalls them is whether to bulk or cut first, and the honest answer is that a skinny fat transformation usually doesn't begin with either extreme. Someone new to training, carrying extra fat, is in the rare position of being able to build muscle and lose fat at once for a while, on maintenance calories or a very slight deficit, purely because untrained muscle responds so strongly to the first months of lifting. Chasing a hard bulk from that starting point tends to add fat to a physique that already wanted less of it. The move is to train seriously, keep protein high, hold calories near maintenance, and let the newcomer's advantage do the work before any real surplus is layered on. None of the food does anything without the reason to grow, and the reason to grow is progressive overload. This is the part people skip past because it's less fun to talk about than macros. A surplus doesn't build muscle. A surplus supports the muscle that training demands, and training only demands more when the work gets harder over time. That means adding weight to the bar, or adding reps at the same weight, or getting cleaner and more controlled through a fuller range, week after week, tracked so you actually know it's happening. If your lifts in month 6 look like your lifts in month 1, the surplus you ate for 6 months went somewhere, and it wasn't muscle. The training itself doesn't need to be exotic. Most muscle groups grow well on something like 10 to 20 hard sets a week, taken close enough to failure that the last few reps are genuinely difficult, built mostly around compound movements, with isolation work filling the gaps. What matters far more than the specific split is whether you show up and whether the numbers climb. People burn enormous energy searching for an optimal program, and almost none making an ordinary program progress. The ordinary program that progresses beats the perfect program you abandon in 5 weeks, and it isn't close. Recovery is the quiet variable that decides whether any of this converts. Sleep is the largest single lever, and chronically short sleep blunts recovery and appetite regulation and the hormonal environment muscle depends on. There's no macro split that compensates for 5 hours a night, months on end. This is the part of the foundation that gets the least attention and quietly determines the most. I'll say something here that runs against how bulking usually gets sold. Most of the difference between people who build a good natural physique and people who spin their wheels isn't program design or supplement choice. It's whether they can tolerate how slow it feels while it's working. A quarter pound a week is barely visible. It doesn't feel like progress on any given Tuesday. And the whole thing only reveals itself in 6-month and 12-month stretches, which is a time scale almost nobody wants to be measured on. The people who make it are usually the ones who stop needing the mirror to reward them every week. Which brings the whole thing back to measurement, because a lean bulk is really a feedback loop more than a plan. You set the surplus, you hold it steady, you track your weight as a weekly average rather than a daily reading, you watch your lifts, and you adjust. If the average is climbing too fast, you trim a little. If it's flat for 2 or 3 weeks, and your training is progressing, you nudge it up. The plan on paper is only a hypothesis. The scale and the logbook are what tell you whether it's true for your body, and your body is the only one whose answer counts. That's the foundation. The numbers are unglamorous, and the timeline is longer than anyone selling a program wants to admit. But a natural lifter who eats a small surplus, anchors protein to his body weight, drives progressive overload, and protects his sleep will build muscle about as fast as his biology allows. There is no version that goes faster. There's only the version that stays lean while it happens, and the version that doesn't. So if you want that entire system handed to you, maintenance, macros, progression, and the weekly adjustments already mapped out, my Natural Lean Bulk program is the first link in the description. Start it today, and a year from now, you'll be a full year of gains, ahead of the version of you that's still guessing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.